going to name this in-game and then square brackets with
واو صباح الخير. من ايه اخباركم؟ مظبوط بس اعدادات وكده. يلا بينا. بسم
replay. Now, if I drag this up to be directly below my in-game scene and I switch between them, you can see there's absolutely no difference between them because they are duplicates of one another. What we want to do is actually have the instant replay within this in-game with replay scene. So come across here, click add, go to scene and choose our instant replay nested scene. Now you can see right now that this is taking up the whole of this scene, so I want to actually rescale it. I'm going to lock the game capture to make sure we don't drag that, and then just resize this to roughly about 2/3 of my screen, and then position it in the middle. So what we have right now is we have our live gameplay in the background, our replay in the middle here on the right hand side, and you can see our actual camera is hidden behind. So I'm going to move our camera across and just disable that scene real quick, resize this to be roughly a little bit bigger, something along that line. I'm just going to crop this in a little bit just to make sure that we're not wasting any space, and then re-enable the instant replay, and you can see here that we roughly have something in place now. So let's just recap again. We have our in-game scene, so we're playing a game, we create a sick highlight, we swap to our in-game with replay, and the idea here is the video here is going to update with the newly created replay. We still have a live webcam so we can react to the replay happening there, and we still have our gameplay happening live in the background, which we're going to blur out. So if we switch between our in-game and our in-game with replay scenes right now, it doesn't look great, does it? Because it's just a sharp cut between the two scenes. So what we actually want to do now is use that move transition plugin that we installed at the beginning to make this sort of move across and look a lot more aesthetic. So what we need to do is actually add the move transition to our transitions list here. So you probably have cut fade, maybe you've added to stinger before. We need to add a new one, which we should see here is move if we've installed the plugin correctly. So select add a move transition, you can name it whatever you want or leave it set as move, and once that's set up you should get a new box here with a lot of different options. There's 3 real main settings that you want to change. These are the matched items, the appearing items, and the disappearing items settings. Now when they're talking about matched items, they're actually talking about the sources that exist between the two scenes. So let's break this down. If we have 2 different scenes, let's say scene A and scene B, matched items is talking about all the items that exist in both scene A transitioning to scene B. Appearing items is talking about all the new sources that appear in scene B when you're transitioning from scene A, and disappearing items is the exact opposite, all the sources that don't exist anymore. So if you want to copy the exact settings that I've used, there's only a couple of things that you need to change. You can leave matched items completely as it is by default, and then for appearing items and disappearing items, you want to leave the easing set to ease in and out, the easing function to cubic, zoom ticked, and then position, we can change that to none, and transition, we can change that to fade. Now you can leave curve as it is and do the exact same for disappearing items. So position to none, transition to fade, and then we can click OK. Now by default, I think the duration for the move transition is at the default for OBS, which is 300 milliseconds, which I think is too quick. I'd recommend setting this somewhere between 500 and 1000 milliseconds, but feel free to set something and play around. So now let's have a look at what happens when we change between our in-game and our in-game with replay scene. So what's actually happening is the webcam which exists in both scenes is moving across. You can see that easing and resizing, and the instant replay which only exists in scene 2 is coming up from the very center, which is exactly how we have set this up. Okay, so we're nearly there. There's a couple of things that we're going to do to make this look more aesthetically pleasing, and the first of now by default, I think the duration for the move transition is at the default for OBS, which is 300 milliseconds, which I think is too quick. I'd recommend setting this somewhere between 500 and 1000 milliseconds, but feel free to set something and play around. So now let's have a look at what happens when we change between our in-game and our in-game with replay scene. So what's actually happening is the webcam which exists in both scenes is moving across. You can see that easing and resizing, and the instant replay which only exists in scene 2 is coming up from the very center, which is exactly how we have set this up. Okay, so we're nearly there. There's a couple of things that we're going to do to make this look more aesthetically pleasing, and the first of those is to blur our live gameplay that's happening in the background. So to do that, we're going to use the Stream Effects plugin. First thing we need to do is actually delete the current game capture that we have in the background. So yes, delete that, and now we can see we've got a black background. Instead, we're going to add a source mirror with the same name. So go to add source mirror, and then we're going to call it the exact same. So game capture is what the original source was called, but we're going to add the word mirror to the end. And we're going to actually find that source within the list. So you can see here, game capture source, and it's probably too big, so let me just resize that and then drag it to the bottom. So it looks exactly the same right now. What we're going to be able to do though is, because this is a mirror of the original, we're going to be able to apply a different filter to it, and the filter we're going to apply is the blur filter. So come down to effect filters, select the blur filter, and just add a blur. Now there's a few different types of blurs that you can use here, and some of them may be familiar to you if you've used any video software, but you want to keep the resource relatively light on your computer, and adding one of the more expensive blurs here will really tax your computer heavily. So I would recommend setting a dual filtering blur, roughly 5 or 6. You can see here in the preview, that looks really good now, and now you can see we have a blurred background. But you may think we can just swap between our scenes now, and one will be blurred and one won't because we've used a source mirror. And you'd be right, but interestingly, the Move plugin will treat them as two separate sources, so you can see them zooming in and out, which isn't exactly what we want to do. We really just want to blur between this and the second source. Thankfully, they thought about that when designing the plugin. So if you come back across to our Move scene transition and go to the properties, you can see one of the top options here is to match with the source name, and then you can choose between 3 different options. Now, if you remember rightly, we named the mirror source exactly the same, but with the word mirror at the end. So if we enable this last option here, which matches if the source name with the last word remove matches the other source name, which it does, and click OK, we can now swap between our 2 sources, and you can see that it just blurs one in and blurs the other out, which is exactly what we want to happen. It treats the sources as exactly the same, even though they're technically 2 different sources. So we're actually pretty much done with the tutorial here. You can, at any point in your in-game scene, save a replay with the hotkey and then swap across to your replay, and it's going to show that recent replay that you've saved with the overlay on top of it, with the blurred background of your live gameplay, and it all looks really smooth and the transition is awesome. But you can actually make this a little bit easier for you to manage. So rather than having to click so many different buttons, you could set up a multi-action with the Stream Deck or something like Touch Portal to save a replay, swap scenes, and then swap back again after a certain amount of time. So you can do it all with one key press rather than having to fiddle around and press 3 or 4 different keys. So here I am in the Elgato Stream Deck software, and you can see I've created 3 different hotkeys. One is just a very simple hotkey to actually save the replay. So this is the hotkey that I set up within OBS Studio, just a hotkey button within the Stream Deck software, so I can click that and save a replay at any time, but it's not going to swap scenes or anything like that. Next, I have a multi-action, which is going to save and then swap to watch the replay. So if we actually take a look at what happens within this multi-action, you can see that it presses the save replay hotkey, so it actually saves a new replay. It then waits 1 second and then swaps to our with replay scene to actually play back the replay, then waits 20 seconds for the replay to roughly finish, and then swaps back to our main in-game scene. So you don't have to do these last 2 steps if you want to control the time yourself, but again, you're just making it even easier for yourself with 1 click to swap to your replay and swap back again. And the final one that I have is reload and watch replay. So this is if you want to save a replay at some point and then watch it back later. So rather than saving and instantly swapping to it, let's say you get a really great action, you can click this key, and then when you want to review that clip that you've saved, you can press this one. So it's just going to swap to view the most recently saved replay, watch it for 20 seconds, and then swap back again. So really, I would position them more like this, because you're going to be using these 2 in conjunction with each other whenever you want to watch the replay, and then this one does it all in one go effectively. Obviously, if you want to go the extra step like Shroud did and have a second scene which zooms in even further on this replay into the middle of his crosshair, it's really simple to do. You would just create a new scene with this instant replay nested scene within, and then just have it even bigger, so zoomed up full screen or even larger like he does. Really, the creativity is down to you guys now as to how you want to set up your replay scenes to make them look as aesthetic as possible. Hopefully this video has been super helpful and you now have an instant replay feature set up for your live streams. If you have watched and followed along, please do give the video a thumbs up, that massively helps me out. And of course, check out the rest of the content on the Gaming Careers YouTube channel. I'd love to see your Elgato, they've finally done it. They took everything that people love about the Stream Deck and everything that people love about devices like the Beacon Mix and made a Stream Deck with dials. Jokes aside, Stream Deck Plus may well be able to replace 2 or even 3 devices on my desk, providing one very specific change happens, which we'll get to, but first, let's take a look at actually what Stream Deck Plus is. Up top, you have 8 different Stream Deck LCD keys that everybody knows and loves, except these are actually quite a bit larger and more spaced out than the keys found on both the Stream Deck or the Stream Deck XL. At the bottom, you have 4 endlessly rotating dials that can be clicked in and have those nice little tactile bumps for feedback as you rotate. Separating the keys and the dials is this touch-sensitive screen that Elgato is calling the touch strip. This displays the information about each of the dials beneath it, but is also capable of being pressed or swiped for additional functionality. At launch, Elgato has added dial functionality for all of their flagship software, so you can configure the dials to adjust the ISO, white balance, or pan tilt zoom of your webcam in Camera Hub, turn lights on and off, or adjust their brightness or color temperature in Control Center, or probably most importantly, mute or adjust the levels for any of your audio inputs or outputs in Wavelink. They've also launched a new plugin through the Stream Deck software called Volume Controller that lets Windows users, not surprisingly, control the volumes of individual applications. This is pretty smart as you can set a profile that will automatically populate the dials with any apps that are currently playing audio. Similar to the previous Stream Decks, you're not just limited to these 8 buttons or 4 dials. You can have endless pages that can each have different functionality for the buttons and for the dials. Swiping left or right on the touch strip navigates through the Stream Deck pages that you've set up, effectively giving you as many buttons or dials as you could ever need. The dials can also make use of a feature called dial stacking, which allows you to add as many different actions as you want to a single dial. Clicking the dial inwards will then cycle between the actions added. A simple example of how I've used dial stacking so far is I've got a single dial controlling both my personal monitor mix as well as the audience stream mix for something like my music. I can adjust my personal mix volume in my headphones as well as the audience mix volume just by clicking in the dial. You can customize each section of the touch strip with your choice of icons and backgrounds so that each of the dial's controls are instantly recognizable. You can even choose a background for the full screen. Elgato has included a bunch of different options at launch, or you can even create and use one of your own designs. The amount of functionality that you can now get when you're combining the dial stacking with the touch strip now means that you have so much more space for your Stream Deck keys. I used to have to use 5 different Stream Deck buttons per light on my Stream Deck just to allow me to turn it on, adjust the brightness up and down, and then adjust the color temperature. In this video, I'm going to be showing you how you can separate all of your different audio sources to just one dial and the touch strip, not to mention how much better it feels to adjust the brightness with just a turn of a dial versus having to press a button repeatedly. Software-wise, adding controls to the dials is as easy as it was to add buttons to the Stream Deck, simply dragging and dropping. There's even a new dials toggle which will show you all of the different available dial actions that you can add to your Stream Deck Plus. You can even set up the dials so both clockwise and anti-clockwise rotation, as well as the dial clicks, are mapped to specific hotkeys. This allows you to control things in basically any app, even if it doesn't have a Stream Deck plugin built already. Thinking things like adjusting the brush size in Photoshop, or zooming in and out of timelines in DaVinci Resolve, or even adjusting the playback speed on YouTube. Smart profile switching still works as it did with the other Stream Decks, but now with that added benefit of dials. So if you're editing in Premiere Pro, Stream Deck Plus can be set to show one profile of controls, and then if you swap to a streaming app like OBS, it can automatically swap to showing all of your Twitch controls instead. Right, let's swap to talking about Wavelink, because Elgato did something that I really never expected them to do. They've unlocked Wavelink to anyone with a Stream Deck Plus. That means that you no longer need to use an Elgato Wave device like Wave 1, Wave 3, Wave DX, or Wave XLR to make use of the excellent Wavelink software. You can use any microphone, be it USB or XLR, with Wavelink. If you're using an XLR mic, you can use any interface and still get all of that Wavelink functionality. So controlling all of your different audio channels, sub-mixes, adding custom VST plugins, and that easy audio management in OBS. Now,
I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness.
do, so instinctive and so passionate. Every word I move, so descriptive like an adjective. I got a vendetta against people who patented being negative when you should be getting after it. I got facts over tracks, this and that, spitting slow, spitting fast. I could roast, I could gas, think I'm okay at last, but I
Hey creators, let's talk about Live Q&A, a feature in Live Control Room that lets you create and manage Q&A sessions in live chat during your streams and premieres. Interacting with your viewers during a stream is a great way to deepen your connection to your audience, and Live Q&A lets you build community while smoothly managing on-topic questions. We'll walk you through how to start a live Q&A, add a prompt, and select the questions you want to feature. Let's dive in. First, here's how to start a live Q&A session. Click the plus under Live Chat in Live Control Room. Then click Start a Q&A. Type the prompt you want to feature in the box, then hit Start Q&A. Your prompt will become a pinned chat, and your viewers will be able to submit their questions, which you'll see in a list, similar to live chat. This is where you can select which questions you want to feature and answer. To select a question, hover over the question you want to pick. Click the three-dot menu, then click Select Question. When you select a question, it will become the pinned chat and will be highlighted for you and your viewers. When you're ready to pick a new question, hover over the next question you want to pick, repeat the process of clicking the three-dot menu, then select Question. If at any point you want to switch back to live or top chat, you can click on the drop-down arrow next to Questions. You'll see three options: Top Chat, Live Chat, and Questions. Top Chat filters out potential spam to make chat easier to read, and Live Chat is the unfiltered view of all chats. Once you're done answering questions,